everybody. We're going to get started. Thanks for coming to City Chat. Steve, I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can talk about whatever is going on with the city.
All right, thank you. This is generally a kind of a question and answer time period. The one thing I wanted to talk about that I want to get in today is the capital improvement program. One of the things I also want to talk about is I had an interesting article that I passed out to council members in the Public Works Board this week on speed limits and the issues of intuitive, counterintuitive, and non-intuitive decision-making processes, and that a lot of people think that putting out a lot of stop signs reduces traffic speed, when actually it doesn't. It actually increases mid-block speed rather than reducing it. So actually doing a study and trying to figure out how to correctly place and set the speed limits is a better process. So that, you know, what was you thought was common sense doesn't really work. There's also the other concept of blowback or unintended consequences, where you make a decision that probably works for you but in the long run doesn't, and one of them is Y2K. And when the engineers made that decision to use that dating process in the late 50s, early 60s, they did it based on financial issues. It saved businesses lots of money because the memory required for computers at that time was extremely expensive. So when it came time for 2000 and they needed to switch from 19 to 2000, it also cost them a lot of money, but at the time they made a decision based on what was appropriate at the time and cost saving and beneficial to them at the time, and they didn't look at what was going to happen in the long run. And those are a lot of issues that we deal with in government all the time, and they're hard to project. So those are types of things that we look at, and we have to try and figure out how to be able to educate the public into those decision-making processes as we're going through. You know, we go through, we do a traffic study, we pass it out to the council members, they look at it, we explain it to them, but there's, you know, a traffic study is like this thick. And going through all the details and trying to understand all the additional background information, because they list, you know, the traffic study from this year from the Federal Highway Administration or the Institute of Traffic Engineers or whatever, and so there's a lot of data that's attached to those types of studies, and the public doesn't pick those up and they don't understand them. All they understand is they want slower traffic. And so we have to try and balance those issues and educate them into what we're trying to do. That takes us into the capital improvement budget, which is our lead process for the Public Works Board moving into the budget. Now, if you look at the calendar that I have for the budget, it actually starts in January, and I actually go through and reset all the conditions from the 2015 budget to what I believe will be necessary in the 2016 budget. And then we start going through and analyzing all the things that didn't make it into the previous year's budget, things that will be issues for the next year, things that have been in our 5-year budgets, capital and regular budget for the last several years, and see if there's still priorities, if they are still relevant, and try and make that budget consistent, get all the information brought around from 2015 to 2016. At that point, generally about late April, I send that to the department heads and start asking them to review it, see if they have any issues, add any of the things that they want into it or can cut out of it, and we go through that process back and forth multiple times until August. August is their last chance to make any changes to the budget. At this point in time, I finalize the budget for what I believe is consistent with what the city wants to achieve in the next fiscal year. And I put the city manager's proposed budget on it and send it to council at their first meeting in September. And when they have from September till the second meeting in November. I should say, we try and have the first meeting in November with the one where they hold the public hearing and can pass the budget, because the county likes the budget early enough that they can get all the bills written up and out in time, and people have it early enough so they can prepare to pay their bill at the end of December. That being said, that doesn't always happen. It leaves us that second meeting in November if we have any issues that we need to iron out to get the budget finalized, but we have to have the budget done at that second meeting in November. They generally hold a couple study sessions over that time period. That budget incorporates the capital budget, and it's listed as, we have two capital budgets. One's called the capital projects budget, which is all the TIDs, and that includes all the major projects that are going on in the tax increment districts, which we have 6. And then there's the capital budget, which is the budget that spends all the money that qualifies as capital projects for the departments. And if you read the budget address, it defines for you how we separate capital projects. Because if you look at the budget, there's usually a page that says, in the operational area, where it says capital. And anything in that area is generally less than 5 years and less than $5,000. If you want to move into the big capital budget, you have to have a longer term, because we're always financing most of that. There's generally somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 that's not, but most of it is financed, so you have to make sure that everything in that category meets the requirements of the financing organizations. We have a program called Planet that we use that structures our capital budget, and we update that in May. And it actually gets sent to the Public Works Board in June. They didn't have a meeting this June, so it went to the July one where they recently reviewed it. And it's broken down by department. And we don't put equipment into this part of the capital budget. This is just mainly capital construction projects. So, we're discussing power lines, streets, water, and sewer. So this year we completed several major projects. In electric, we're going to finish up the substation behind the old municipal building and a lot of the underground lines and connections that make that underground system now work. So it runs underground from the back of the municipal building over to the fire department and up to the school, the middle school. And you'll see in the back of the municipal building, there are 3 new boxes back there in that center circle, and then you go over by the middle school by the batting cages, there are some there. And then there are a couple small ones at the fire department and behind the old municipal building, actually right at the edge of Lake Street in that driveway that runs up past what's now the Parks building. We did Cook Street, Browns Court, and Madison. We did a detention basin at the end of Circle Drive. I know all you know where that is. And we're looking at doing a couple other maintenance types of projects, but they weren't in the capital budget. Next year, the primary electric project will be doing underground from the municipal building down to the high school. And we'll do the same thing at the high school. We'll put in 3 of those transformer systems, and we'll upgrade the electric service into the high school, which will probably benefit their new construction over there. That'll be the primary electric project. The streets project, primary project, will be East Lake Park Place. And that is driven by the East Lake, or the South Main Street project. Most of the stormwater drainage coming off that street, which has almost no stormwater on it right now, will end up in that area. And so we are constructing a main stormwater line from the east end of the fish hatchery fence up to South Main Street. The rest of the street then will be, they'll put in curb and gutter, sidewalk, and base and paving. And it won't be the full length of the street. The far east end is in relatively good shape and has good curb and gutter. So we're going to start basically from where the curb and gutter ends and head east. Pretty much to Meadow Ridge Circle, although the pavement will be replaced the whole way, the sidewalk will not, and none of the curb will be replaced. There are only the areas where the curb doesn't currently exist. There's currently a water main there that's probably not, wouldn't be in a normal replacement schedule, but the distribution system needs certain size water mains to run from one place to another. So you have at Pinnacle, you have a 10-inch or 12-inch water main, and on South Main Street, we're going to be putting in a 12-inch water main. And so you want to run a 12-inch water main to connect those two. And it's particularly important on this street because the water system down there isn't adequate to fight a fire currently at the high school. Or provide, if they do any work down there, they're probably going to be required to put in fire suppression equipment. And they wouldn't have enough water pressure to meet their fire suppression requirements. So that'll be probably the key project next year. We're also doing one on Griffith, which is a street that it's 1 block long. It has probably old lead joint water mains running through sanitary manholes. Manholes are the sanitary sewer system that is probably pretty old. We haven't TV'd it yet, but we're going to look at it. But we'd have to move it anyways to get the water main and the sewer separated. It'll take curb and asphalt, and the asphalt's in really bad condition. And some stormwater. We're going to do some stormwater. I imagine the asphalt went really bad because the stormwater wasn't adequate. So those will be the 2 Main Street projects next year. We do have some additional money set aside that will be kind of used as maintenance, some oil and chip, some mill and overlay on some streets that we're looking at. One of them, we're looking at, if we don't get West Prospect and Ferry this year, it'll definitely be in next year. And then the other one is, we're looking at doing some work on Topol, which is County Highway A's south from 89. And then, depending on when the town of Lake Mills, town of Astelin upgrades Harvey Road, we'll also have to pay half of that. So those are projects that are coming up. In 17, we also currently have Brewster Street on the list. And Brewster Street was on the list for 2001. So it slid 14, 15, well, by that time it'll be at least 15 years. It was constructed in 72. It's still not in too bad a shape, but the rest of the subdivision was done, and we wanted it to be kind of done in a sequence. It was on that timeline. It is based on a timeline. It is consistent with the replacement time. There is also another one where the water main needs to be replaced. We brought a 12-inch up when we did Arbor Creek to the south end of East Lakeland Heights, and then we have a new 12-inch water main on County Highway B, and we need to tie those together at that point so that we have adequate distribution capabilities. So that'll be a big project. Not much sewer there. We will look at doing a sanitary sewer project on Water Street. And there we're going to do a lining. We're not going to dig the street up It's actually, that was the main sanitary sewer line in the city. And then in 2004, we ran a new one down Lake Street and made that the main sanitary sewer line, and it handles both sides of the city. The idea is that when we did South Main Street, we would take Water Street out to South Main, all the way out to South Main Street. And anything from that point south would drain down Water Street, and anything from Lake Street north would drain into the Lake Street line. And that way we would split up the flows and control our growth issues better. And then not have to build some gigantic sanitary sewer line all the way through the city. So, but before we can extend that line, it's a 14-inch line. It needs to be lined to make sure that its condition is adequate to handle the new sewer flows. So lining is basically a polyethylene or some type of fiberglass material that gets pushed in and pressed out, and then it gets hard up against the edges and seals the sewer back up. And then they run a camera with a knife on it and cut out all the holes for all the laterals so that the people's sewer lines can continue to get in. Those are the primary projects over the next 2 years. Obviously in 18, South Main Street will be the biggest project we've done in a long time. It's a $6 million project overall, about $4 million in road project, and $1 million in water and $1 million in sewer. It will incorporate stormwater, sidewalks. It will actually be a full concrete street, so it'll have concrete curb and concrete lanes. So they will pour the lanes in a monolith pour. So like normally you see them pour the curb and gutter and then become an asphalt. This will probably be, half the street will be poured at one time, and then the other half will be poured at one time. They don't need to separate the curb from the lane. They will do the sidewalks. The sidewalks will be 5 feet wide, and they will pour those. They, historically you see sidewalks poured where they set forms and pour. This will probably be poured with the same way they pour the street, with a slip form, as we call it, where it's a piece of equipment that they just pump the concrete in the front, and the sidewalk comes out formed without any forms at all. It's just stiff enough and hard enough and perfectly shaped that it's a sidewalk. And so they'll do that for all of it. There won't be any concrete forms on the job at all, unless there's some minor ones in the specific locations. And I say that probably because obviously means and methods for every contractor is a little bit different, but those are the most likely methods of doing it. It's generally the lowest cost, so that usually means the low bidder is using those types of processes. And I'm imagining that everything associated with that, all water, sewer, electric, will be associated with those types of projects at that point in time, with the South Main Street project. Most of the storm sewer will run to East Lake Park Place. Some of it will run out to Pinnacle. Some of it will run down to the dam. The electric will mainly be the street lights. We're putting up a antique style street light. There will be one parking lane on the east side. There will be 2 bike lanes. The street is actually going to be a foot to a foot and a half wider than it currently is. Depends on the overall design of the stormwater system. And when I say stormwater system, the curb is considered part of the stormwater system, so it depends on how wide what they call the gutter pan of the stormwater is. Most of them are designed at 18 inches, but they can modify those, so that's something we're looking at. And again, there is a situation where the pan width and the size of the inlet affects how the street gets cut. Concrete cracks about every 10 feet, no matter what. And it also cracks at all these odd points. So when you put in a storm inlet, generally you're going to find if they don't cut it appropriately, there's a crack at each one of the corners of the storm inlet that radiates away from it. And so they really don't want to modify how they pour that gutter, because then it affects all their cuts and the long-term life of those inlets and gutters. It also, generally what happens is the narrower it gets, the smaller the inlet into the stormwater inlet, the less water that gets in. So then the more inlets you have to put in. That pushes the cost up, and it creates more cracks, and it requires more cutting. And so you have all these, well, you think that those changes are simple, they're not. They're kind of counterintuitive. They have all kinds of unintended consequences to them. The base, well, the street will be staged. So you're going to have a certain amount of sanitary sewer done, and a certain amount of water main done, a certain amount of storm sewer done, and then your road base, and then pouring the lanes. And they're going to continue to do that in sections down the street based on where traffic control issues work the best. But the first thing that, yeah.
They're going to start at the corner, downtown corner, and work south? Or isn't that for sure?
Well, the experience is that they're going to do sanitary sewer first because it's the deepest. And so you always want to do your deepest project first. And sanitary sewer is a gravity flow process. It has the gravity flow. So you want to start at the low point, which would be here at Water Street, running south. And so the likelihood is that they will have to start there. I won't guarantee that, but if I were doing it, that would be the way I would want to do it. And so I anticipate that they might have this section between Lake Street and Water Street is going to probably flow to Lake Street. So they'll probably replace that one section first. The section north was replaced a couple of years ago, so they're not going to have to do anything with that. The water main on the north side was replaced, I don't know, maybe 17, 18 years ago, but that's a short period. They have a second water main on the new water main on North Main Street. There is in Commons Park. The old water main is under the sidewalk, close to under the sidewalk, on the west side of Main Street. And there's so much material in that part of Main Street. We've asked them to remove all the old stuff, all the old sanitary sewer, all the old water main. So they'll probably do more digging there, but that'll probably be when they do the street. So really the one part of South Main Street between Water and Lake, they might start and run that way. And then the rest of it, they'll run the other way. And they'll do sanitary sewer first, and within that staged area, and then they'll probably do the water main because that's 6.5 feet deep. The sanitary sewer in this area here will probably range from 14 to 28 feet deep. And then the water main will be 6.5 feet deep. Storm sewer is, again, another gravity one. That'll range from probably 6 feet deep to 3 feet deep. I'm anticipating that, I guess we'll wait and see where the gas mains go. The electric is back of the property lines most of the way down until you hit south of Milton, and some of it comes out to the edge of, to the west edge of the street there. They'll probably have that underground by then.
Will they be moving the gas main south of Milton to the property line and so that it's like to be running the road?
I'm not sure what the gas company will do. It depends on what they decide is in their best interest. But I'm anticipating that they will probably move at least significant portions of it. And then it depends on how the state and the city work with them to set up either easements or locations in the right of way. You have to remember, you already have existing water and sewer and gas in the street, and then you have to build the new ones, and then get them up and running, and then disconnect the old ones to the new ones. And so there are all these processes. So you got a street this wide and you got 10 gallons in a 5-gallon bucket. So there are all kinds of, again, means and methods for what each contractor can do and not do in those situations. That's why the street from edge to edge is going to be dug up pretty deep, and then the street base will be at least 2.5, probably 3.5 feet deep. And then on the base for the sidewalk will probably be somewhere from 1.5 foot to 1 foot deep. So you're probably going to see all the trees in that area skimmed right down along the roots all the way down. So you're going to have trees that can take a north-south wind pretty well, but an east-west wind they're probably going to go. And most trees, when they take that kind of root damage, are going to die anyways.
Steve, I got several questions. One is, you said, and Diann brought it up, our sewer on South Main Street that enters into Water Street is only partial. Doesn't the south end of that go to the lift station at the high school?
No.
All the Woodland Beach and that?
No, it all flows down Main Street.
All goes down from the depot all the way to Water Street.
Yes.
But what do the lift stations take care of it?
It takes care of Meadow Ridge Circle and portions of that Lilac Lane development.
Sandy Beach?
No, none of Sandy Beach. All Sandy Beach. Sandy Beach pumps to Lakeside High School.
Right.
And Lakeside High School pumps up to Keys. And Keys flows into South Main Street and all the way down South Main Street. Yeah, the only things, the school administration building and all the houses on Meadow Ridge Circle and the apartments there, they flow down to that lift station. The concession stand at the high school flows there. And then the Lilac Lane area flows there. None of Pinnacle does. I think the Mormon Church flows right straight down Grove Street. So it's a pretty minimal amount of flow into that lift station. But all of South Main Street flows down to, all the way down Main Street.
All right, my other question is, when they replace the sewer and Water Street, are they going to widen the street?
No. When we replace the sewer, we're doing a lining. So we're not even touching the pavement. They go into a manhole and it gets real soft, this material gets real soft, and then they just air push it into and it lines the system. So they don't even dig. It's all done right out of a manhole. We're trying to, that street was replaced in 2000. And so that's, based on city streets, that's a pretty young street. It's 15 years old, so it's within 10 years of replacement, being considered for replacement.
But anyhow, then, what other streets in town other than, when you get South Main Street and Mulberry Street, what other main streets are there? There's a city sewer and water has to be replaced. East Lake is done, am I right?
East Lake Street? Yes, East Lake Street is done. We have to run, probably the next biggest project is running sanitary sewer from Prairie, the end of Prairie Street, up to County Highway V, and then out to just past, well, almost to the cemetery. That'll be the next largest one, because that one's probably the one with the most capacity issues right now. It's not that old, but it has capacity issues. The west side of the lake, the town portion, pumps a lot of water into there, and so it's at a significant capacity. Now we replaced the portion from the wastewater treatment plant out to the end of Prairie. They're just behind the Methodist Church, and so that's in good shape. But that section there would probably be the next main one.
We're looking at 2020, the older part of the year.
Yeah, that would be definitely out 2020 or more. It depends, you know, if there's a big subdivision that gets approved out, you know, like they start building out Sherwood Hills and they have to move up or down. Or something happens on the north side and they decide to stay in that sewer instead of, you know, there's a lift station on the north side of the interstate. And you could upgrade that lift station and pump more in, but that, like I say, that sewer line there's at capacity. Now, right at that point in that intersection of County Highway B and Main Street, you have two main sewer lines. Because just down Main Street a little ways is the North Main Street sewer, which runs down North Main Street and then ties into Lake Street. When we split the two, we would gain a lot of capacity in that Lake Street one. You could take that force main and just pull it out of the Prairie County Highway V sewer line and drop it into the North Main Street, then you could gain a lot of capacity. So those are some options that we have to weigh and balance as we continue to move out. Now right now, that pump station just doesn't pump a lot of sanitary sewer. It's just the hotel and the truck stop and Toll's towing. So it really isn't a main issue. But if there were a lot of development occurring up there and we had to make that decision, it would be easy to make that flip. Now, if you build a couple new subdivisions on the west side, you couldn't do that. So then you would have to upgrade the Prairie Street line. So those are things that we continue to watch and balance and think about as we continue to develop. Just about every street in the old part of the city, so like if we came in and did Fremont and College, we would have to replace the sanitary sewer in those streets. Those are probably the primary ones. Now let's say we jumped back and we did, in 2017, instead of doing Brewster Street, we decided to do CP Avenue because the state gave us enough funding to run that alternate route through. We would not run water and sewer at the same time. There's no need to run it out that far. There's no development. But the second that road goes in, I'm anticipating the pressure to develop those areas will ramp up, and then water and sewer will become a necessity. So then we may have to figure out how we're going to run water and sewer. There are several options we've been weighing there. One is TID could run it a portion of the way depending on what kind of development is in there. If it's a developer, he may have to pay for some of it. So it all comes out to where we're going to run and how we're going to run, and then how it affects the wastewater treatment plant and those types of issues. But we continue. Each project we go through and calculate and weigh it out and do our due diligence to make sure that we've thought about all those issues.
Could I come back to the South Main Street? That's supposed to start when in 2018? As early as possible, or when?
The bid is March. Now, I know for us, when the bid goes out in March, generally means that we take bids in late March, award them sometime mid-April to early May, and it takes another 30 days to get all the contract documents and insurance lined up and get the pre-cons done and all the scheduling and all the shop drawings completed. And so you're looking at, maybe a June, late May, mid-June construction.
Then when would it be finished, or is that still up for grabs?
It's supposed to be finished at the end of November.
No. Has anything been finalized regarding traffic flow during the construction process?
No, it has not.
Because I'm on Grove Street, and I'm thinking we're going to be getting a whole pile of traffic down there, and I don't think the streets were designed to carry probably as much traffic as going to be flowing down that particular street. If it in fact is.
It's designed to handle more than a residential street, but it's not designed to handle semi-traffic. It's a collector. Their streets are divided up into arterials, collectors, and locals. It was designed as a collector, not an arterial. South Main Street is designed as an arterial, so as is CP Avenue. And they have not given us any indication of how they're going to do it. Okay. We met with them. We asked them, to make some adjustments to what their original minimal proposal was. They said that they needed to go back and do analysis on the staging, and that they would get back to us on what they thought would be doable. We had a couple conversations where I thought that we had come to at least a minimal amount of resolution on that they would bring it down South Main Street, out Lake Street to Q, and then south on Q to 89. Some communication since then indicate that they may be retracting that. So we meet with them on August 26th. I guess we'll find out where we're at. But yeah, the detour route is still a pretty substantial discussion, and it's tied in with the staging pretty heavily. We went over a lot of the staging issues with them at the last meeting, and so they were sitting down trying to discuss. They just basically, once we discussed all the staging issues with them, said, okay, we'll get back to you. And we got an August 26th meeting. They haven't given us any indication yet, but there's some trickle out that might be worse than it was before.
Another question regarding the placement of bike lanes on South Main Street. I've seen some discussion in the paper about that. And is there going to be a bike lane on each side, and the city then is assuming the maintenance responsibility for that bike lane? I used to do a lot of bicycling, and I haven't done much recently, but the problem is that cars, as they go by on the regular street with a bike lane over on the side, sweep dirt and glass and everything else into that lane, and unless it's swept by the city, you might as well not have it.
Well, we currently, because we're on a high-quality lake, we sweep streets. Every street in the city gets swept once every 2 weeks. And that's a EPA standard to meet the highest quality water quality issues for stormwater drainage. It's their recommended best management practice for street sweeping. So I don't think that we would have a lot of problem with that. You always have some problem with all lanes, but I don't think that'll be an issue. It's going to be a monolith concrete pour, so it's not an independent bicycle lane. Probably the biggest thing we'll have to do is stripe it. So that, I don't think that'll be a problem. I ride bike, but I ride bike to get places, and so I've never really used bike lanes, so, but we have a pretty active bike group, and they seem to feel that it's a benefit, and so I know Nick Robinson, when they asked for the sharrows to be put on the street, I probably got more emails than any other time on any other issue I had, and there have been some pretty hot issues out there. So, and there's a lot of design features that go into the bike lanes. You got to have a 5-foot bike lane if it's next to a parking lane. If it's not next to a parking lane, it'd be 4 feet, and how they lay into with the additional turn lanes, and all gets tied up. And then what happens down here by the annex and how that gets incorporated in are all issues that I guess they're working on, and I just have to listen to them and try and understand what they're talking about.
You want an update them on what happened with the dam because of bid coming in high?
And we took bids on the dam in late July, and they were about $110,000 higher than the engineer's estimate. So we call that the engineer winning the bid, and he wasn't prepared to do the construction. So we rejected all the bids and are going out for rebid. Generally, you get better bids in the wintertime because they are able to schedule better, so you get more contractors involved and a broader range of contractors. And so we filed for a variance with the DNR, which we received, and so we'll be going out for bids again in late December, probably early January, for construction in early 2016.
Hoping to get a better
Price. Yeah, and I don't know, did you notice that one of the wing walls fell in? So we'll need to start ramping that up.
Never go home.
No, the funny part is that we've got all the plans and drawings and pictures of what we plan to do for next year in. They still required us to do a dam inspection. So we have to pay an additional $2,000 to have dam inspection done, just support what we already have told them that we're going to. Are there any other questions?
Tell us what progress has been made now on if we have future problems with the water call that we had. I know you've done work on getting a better way to get out to the public.
Well, last year part of our strategic plan was to communicate better, so we've been doing more community chats, we've been doing more information on the website, we're doing presentations at Rotary meetings, we're willing to go to other types of meetings.
But in case of like a water boil, kind of notice what's happened with that.
The specific ones that we've done is we've tied into IPAWS, which is an international system where you send an emergency message in, and it gets broadcast from the cell towers in that area. So like, you get weather alerts, and if there's a tornado and it hits your cell phone as a text message, we can send out that there's a water boil.
That's new since it happened.
Yes. Yeah, that's new since it happened. We were actually looking at it. We hadn't gotten the final approval to go through the state and had our people trained, because we were looking at it as part of the other system. We used to use Nixle. We're now looking at flipping to AlertSense because it's compatible with iPause. Obviously, there's costs associated with that, so that's in the budget. So that'll have to wait until the budget comes through. And what else? We've done. Well, we're debating communication methods, and you look at what public relations is versus notifications versus how much two-way communication you want to have versus how much one-way communication you want to have, and when's the right time to do each one of those, and what's the appropriate methods for doing those. And so we're kind of working through those issues, and generally each one of them has some level of cost with them. Nobody in the city really has, we've been on a big data push. We've been so lean that we don't have anybody that collects and organizes the data. And in order to be able to make good decisions, you need to have good data. Well, we got a lot of data and it's bad. And so we've been making a real push. You get the dashboards I send out. We've been trying to just to put the data in forms and then be able to go through and say, hold it, there's something not consistent here. One of the funny ones that we found is that someone really wants me. The amount of water pumped is 35% more than the amount of water billed. But the amount of water pumped and the amount of water reaching the wastewater treatment plant are, over the last 3 years, have been extremely consistent. So the water being pumped out into the system is hitting the wastewater treatment plant at about the same amount. So that tells me there's something wrong between the amount of water billed and the amount of water pumped, but it's not leaking out, because if it were leaking out of the system, it wouldn't get into the wastewater system. So that kind of starts to narrow down, and we've done 3 water leak studies over the last several years, the last 5 years, and all of them are very small. So it's starting to say you got a lot of bad meters, or people are diverting water, or there's some reason why the water isn't being metered and billed. And so we put a lot of effort into that. That's why we're looking at the big push on the water meters and those types of things. While we're looking at several big rate increases over the next several years, the one that does the water meters may take the rates out of place, because if you gain 35% in actual billing, you lose that 30% in rates. And then the issue is, well, why don't you just raise the rates and leave the meters alone? Well, that's because the people whose meters are working are picking up the vast majority of the rate, and the people whose aren't. And if you did, then the actual usage and the billing would balance out, rather than having one small group pay for all the water. And so those are the things that we're trying to work through. And as we correct our data, another one would be, we have water meters, we have hot water heater meters, we have sprinkler only meters, and we have sewer only meters. And then we have city meters and town meters, and actually when you add them all up, you never get the same number twice. It's like, how can that happen?
But all the town people are on wells, and so that's coming into the sewers, and that's taken into account, I assume.
Yes. Yeah, we have you have a pretty good idea of how much comes in on each set of flows, and you can also tell when all the I and I is occurring. You have real dry months. We keep pretty substantial weather data, and when you match the weather data to the flows, you can tell when I and I occurring. And I is inflow and infiltration, so that's water. Inflow is like leaking into manholes and broken sanitary sewer lines. Infiltration is that way. Inflow is people running their sump pumps right straight into the sanitary sewer line. Or some system similar to that, where they're, the spouts of the building are running right into the sanitary sewer line. So I is a system where clear water is basically being run into the sanitary sewer line. That is illegal because it there's only so much capacity in a pipe, and that's designed for sanitary sewer flows. And those sanitary sewer flows are almost, everybody uses somewhere between 80 and 100 gallons of water a day, and those sanitary sewer flows, when you start using that for your stormwater and your sump pump, that capacity goes away, and then when that line fills up, that water's got to go somewhere, and it generally goes into someone's basement. In the old days, when I was in Muhammad, during big rainstorms, we used to call basements the sanitary sewer stormwater detention basins, because we filled up a lot of basements. And that's the issue. Then that's an illegal activity. You can't. Anytime you back up out of the system onto the ground or into somebody's basement, that's a violation, and that gets recorded in our compliance maintenance annual report for wastewater. And they monitor those, and then those are, and our insurance company doesn't like them either because they flow into significant costs and issues. So we don't want people putting clear water into our sanitary sewer. We have enough flowing from old sanitary sewer lines, so that those all tie together into how the flows are calculated. And we have a pretty good idea. We have an I&I study, and then we monitor our flows. And if you look at them over a certain number of years, you can see exactly how the I&I hits us. You can watch the water flows and tell when we've had a water leak, and then if the water leak affected the sanitary sewer.
Well, we can always contact the EPA and see if they want to do what they did in the Colorado River, and we can just see what color the sewer is.
We used to have in the 70s, there were a lot of experimental wastewater systems being put out, and one of them was in a sanitary district in Illinois on the Sangamon River. And it was just a big basin that basically allowed the sewer to rot down, and then they pumped it off. But every time the river flooded, the basin overflowed, and then it flowed down the river to Decatur, where Lake Decatur sat, and Lake Decatur was the water supply for the city of Lake Decatur. So it made for a lot of interesting battles between the city of Decatur and the Sangamon Valley Sanitary District.
Like Milwaukee, same problem.
Kind of.
Can you address the wastewater situation and also what's happening with the potential, there's going to be a hearing and there's going to be possible litigation? I was saying, oh, okay, the possible litigation. Can you just address it briefly for me?
I can address some of that. She asked about issues going on at the wastewater treatment plant. With flow issues that we've had over the last 12 months. And we've had some upsets at the wastewater treatment plant in relationship to 3 different types of issues. One is pH. One is a certain type of new cleaner that's been put out, which is quatramines. And then the other one is a certain type of oil that's fed into the system. All of them have 3 different unique things that they do a wastewater treatment plant. We also have had some solids that have come down that are extremely high in BOD. We've been working through process to be able to learn where those problems are coming from. So we've issued several permits to businesses, and that's basically looking at being able to get systems where we can monitor what their sewage is like, so we can tell if where the problems are coming from and how to deal with it. I think you heard Bill talk at the Public Works Building Board meeting the other night that it's the first time in 2 years that he's seen the wastewater treatment plant look like it was when it was functioning normally. So you can see that we've probably gotten to a point where we've had enough compliance to at least get close to where we're supposed to be. Now you know that we're under a new EPA permit and that we have 5 years to hit the new standards. And so we'll be pressing harder on certain types of flows and chemicals in the next coming years to help us meet those. And then there's some other processes we'll have to go through in order to be able to meet those requirements. We technically cannot test low enough to meet our new permit limits. So as we hit the percentage, our creek is so small and the flow is so low that it creates significant problems for our wastewater treatment plant. So the most likely route for long-term resolution of our problems at the wastewater treatment plant, other than those specific permit issues, which were the BODs, the quatramines, and the pH. But some of our other TMDLs, our total daily maximum requirements like phosphorus and nitrogen, we're going to have to pay other plants that are on larger streams to reduce theirs more so that we get they basically meet our requirement. Let's say they can meet a certain TDML and they reduce below theirs to take up ours. So Waterloo, who's on the Crawfish River, if they reduce they get a total daily maximum BOD of 200, and they reduce theirs to 185, that extra 15% we can buy from them, or 15 points, whatever it is. We can buy that from them and then qualify for it because our creek runs into the Crawfish River. We can buy from Jefferson because the crawfish runs into the rock. So we have a couple areas there where we could start looking at how we're going to meet our permit requirements, because from a pure scientific method, we couldn't do it at our plant. So you have like 3 or 4 different issues in that overall permit.
So when did that new permit start?
This year. And one of them is temperature. We have to reduce the temperature of the water we drop into the creek. That one we should be able to meet. But the pH and the nitrogen, or not the pH, the phosphorus and the nitrogen and the potential BODs are probably going to be an issue for us. Any other questions?
Thanks everybody for coming, and we'll probably have another one, I'm thinking end of October, beginning of November, so thank you.
Thank you.